Chapter 1. In this grand city, pulsing with ambition, two families stood as glittering symbols of power and prosperity. The Mehra family, synonymous with innovation and wealth, led by the formidable Rajesh Mehra, and the Roy family, whose generations of military service had built an enduring legacy of honor, patriotism, and prestige. Unbeknownst to them, the paths of these two families were about to cross in such a way that their resplendent lives would be thrown into upheaval, and the vulnerabilities buried deep within their hearts would be exposed. Aditya Mehra was the pride of the Mehra family, their golden son, embodying his father's lifelong toil and ambition. Tall, with sharp features and eyes that could command attention in any room, he managed the vast Mehra Group empire, spanning from real estate to technology, with remarkable skill. His MBA studies abroad had not only equipped him with business acumen, but also provided him with a network that spanned continents. To the outside world, he appeared as a man who fit effortlessly into glitzy parties, boardrooms, and exclusive golf courses. Yet, only those close to him knew of his inner turmoil. Beneath the veneer of success and power, he longed for a true connection, one unclouded by ambition or family expectations. The Roy family, in contrast, led lives rooted in strict discipline and duty. Arijit Roy, the youngest naval officer to make a distinguished name for himself, was a living example of these ideals. A tall man with broad shoulders and a face marked by quiet intensity, he seemed capable of withstanding any storm, whether of life or sea. His path had always been clear, shaped by his father's lessons in patriotism and the rigorous training at the National Defense Academy. Yet, behind this composed exterior lay a man who dreamed of simple, serene moments that always seemed just beyond his reach. Arijit shared a unique bond with his sister, Gitanjali Roy, one that had grown stronger amidst their shared challenges and responsibilities. After their mother's untimely death, Gitanjali had taken on the role of caregiver. She possessed a motherly warmth, sharp intellect, and unwavering resolve, which were her true strengths. She was married to Rajiv Sinha, the influential chairman of one of the country's leading banks. Rajiv, wise and calm, was a man whose single word could alter the atmosphere of any boardroom, with influence reaching the highest echelons of government and society. Together, Gitanjali and Rajiv were a pair who harmonized each other's ambitions and needs beautifully. Kavya Sharma Roy was a woman who wore her simplicity and grace effortlessly. Her beauty extended beyond the physical, it carried a quiet wisdom that had once captured the admiration of her university professors. She had studied literature deeply and dreamed of writing stories that touched people's hearts. But life had changed her path. After marrying Arijit, she gracefully embraced her new life and found contentment in caring for their daughter, Ananya. Ananya was a lively child, her eyes bright with curiosity, and her laughter full of life's freshness. A blend of her mother's delicate charm and her father's determination, she filled every corner of their home with joy, even when Arijit was away on his naval journeys. Yet, for Kavya, these moments of happiness often faded into silence. The vast, empty house frequently reminded her of the loneliness that came with being a naval officer's wife. She attended social gatherings, organized playdates for Ananya, and maintained a perfect face of contentment. But deep within, echoes of her old aspirations resonated in her quiet moments, and she longed for conversations that extended beyond formalities and maternal advice. In these parallel worlds, one of dazzling success and strategic ambition, and the other of honor and deeply rooted duty, cracks were beginning to form beneath the polished surface. The stage was set for choices and encounters that would reveal the vulnerabilities, desires, and betrayals hidden behind their masks. Here, their stories would unfold, driven by fate, longing, and the weight of expectations that neither ambition nor loyalty could entirely control. Chapter 2. The story took a turn on a warm summer evening, when both families were about to cross paths at a grand club called Elysium, known for its vibrancy and exclusivity. The city's elite gathered there, seeking brief escapes from their responsibilities to savor moments of joy and connection. Kavya reluctantly accepted an invitation from her friend Mira for another friend's birthday celebration. As she entered the dimly lit space filled with musical waves, colorful lights, and the soft clinking of glasses, a sense of unfamiliar unease enveloped her. It had been a long time since she had found herself in such a lively setting, so different from the calm of her home, and Ananya's bedtime stories. The club buzzed with laughter and merriment as groups swayed to the music, while others relaxed on plush sofas, sipping cocktails and sharing light-hearted tales. Kavya took her seat, feeling a slight hesitation mixed with a strange excitement. She glanced around, not searching for anyone in particular, but her gaze stopped upon a familiar face. Aditya Mehra stood at the bar, surrounded by a few admirers and business associates. His signature smile, brimming with confidence and warmth, lit up his face as he exchanged jokes and raised a toast. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, he looked as charismatic as his reputation suggested. The atmosphere around him was so charged that when his eyes roamed across the room and paused briefly on Kavya, it was impossible not to notice. It was a fleeting moment, a moment that only the two of them could sense. There was something in Aditya's intense and curious gaze that made Kavya take note just as Meera called out to her. "Aditya, meet Kavya," she said with a laugh. "You two should get along well, after all, you both share a love for the arts and literature." Kavya's heart pounded in her chest as Aditya approached, his presence effortlessly commanding attention. Up close, she noticed his well-defined jawline, and eyes that seemed to see beyond expressions, reading into the very essence of a person. "Pleased to meet you, Kavya," he said, extending his hand. His voice was deep and calm, carrying a hint of an introduction that felt strangely familiar. "Likewise," Kavya replied, trying to keep her gaze steady, a faint smile playing on her lips. Their conversation began with casual topics, the party, light-hearted jokes about the guests, but soon delved into deeper themes. Kavya, usually reserved and cautious with her words, found herself feeling an unusual ease, surprising even herself. "So, Meera mentioned you're into books," Aditya said, taking a sip of his drink. "Not the usual romance novels, I presume?" Kavya raised an eyebrow, a hint of mischief in her smile. "Definitely not. I prefer stories where characters struggle to understand their worlds, where the ending isn't just a happy one but one that feels earned." Aditya laughed, his deep voice cutting through the surrounding noise. "Absolutely. Most people don't realize that the most memorable stories are those that challenge us." Their conversation drifted around literature, art, and the hidden aspects of life they both had observed but rarely spoken about. Aditya shared his admiration for writers who pushed boundaries, while Kavya opened up about her dream of writing, a dream that had remained incomplete amidst the routines of her life. "Why haven't you pursued it?" Aditya asked, looking at her with a gaze that seemed to probe deeper. A simple question, but one that reached into the depths of her heart. Kavya's smile faded slightly, and she lowered her eyes. "Life doesn't always go as planned," she said softly, recalling nights holding Ananya's little hand, waiting for Arijit's calls from distant shores, and the silence that deepened in their home. Aditya's expression shifted, conveying an understanding laced with something else she couldn't quite identify. Their conversation paused briefly, but without discomfort, as if they were both attempting to grasp this newfound connection. The night went on, and amidst the laughter and music, they found themselves enveloped in a small, unspoken world. Their glances held silent conversations, lingering on each other for moments at a time. As the party neared its end, Meera teased with a laugh, "Look at you two. Talking like you've known each other for years." Aditya raised an eyebrow, glancing at Kavya with a smile, and she returned a soft laugh, not at the comfort they felt, but at how at ease she truly was. They exchanged contact numbers under the guise of discussing books and recommendations. When Aditya finally bid her farewell, there was an unspoken promise in his gaze that this would not be their last meeting. That night, as Kavya stepped out of the club, a strange mix of excitement and guilt swirled within her chest. She felt that something within her had changed, something she could not yet name. Amidst the bustling city lights, cracks had started to appear in her world, and she had no idea what might emerge from them. Chapter 3. Over the next few months, Aditya and Kavya's paths began to intertwine in a way that felt almost destined. What had started as a few coincidental encounters and late-night messages evolved into a steady rhythm, one they never openly acknowledged but had both begun to anticipate. Aditya would call after a long day, his voice weary yet eager, as if the true solace of his day could only be found in their conversations. Kavya, who once spent her evenings helping Ananya with homework or aimlessly scrolling through her phone, now found herself by the window, phone in hand, waiting for his call. Their conversations carried an honesty that surprised them both. It was as though the late hours of the night, when the world around them was asleep, gave them permission to shed the masks they wore by day. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life, Kavya? Aditya's voice held a rare vulnerability that night. He sat in his dimly lit study, a half-empty glass of whiskey in hand, staring out at the city lights. Kavya was silent for a few moments, watching the moonlight spread across her floor. His question resonated within the quiet of her room, touching a chord she had never quite reached before. Sometimes, she said softly, closing her eyes. Sometimes it feels like I'm watching my own life from the outside, powerless to change anything. Aditya's silence spoke volumes. They both understood the feeling, a life led behind a mask, fulfilling others' expectations while yearning for something real within. The world saw them as successful and privileged, but inside, they were simply two souls bound by a quiet discontent. Their meetings became more frequent, outwardly innocent but inwardly holding back a storm. They visited art galleries, strolled through quiet parks where the laughter of children was the only background noise, and sat in the corners of busy cafes, where their conversations knew no bounds. For the first time, Kavya felt truly seen, while Aditya found a peace that was rare in his extravagant life. One rainy afternoon, as they sat in a small cafe tucked away from the main street, Kavya reached for her coffee mug, and their fingers brushed lightly. That simple touch sent a warmth through her, and she found Aditya gazing at her, unspoken words glimmering in his eyes. Raindrops tapped against the window, cocooning them in a world where the outside seemed far away. I wish it could always be like this, Aditya murmured, his normally confident voice carrying a note of yearning. Kavya's heart tightened. She wanted to say that she felt the same, but the weight of reality pressed down upon her. Ananya's laughter, the sound of Arijit's footsteps when he returned from the sea, the life she had built, all hovered over her like a fortress, holding her desires captive. Arijit's return from the sea a few weeks later deepened the chasm within her. What was once a joyful reunion had become a routine. Their conversations were formal, limited to discussions about Ananya's school projects and family events. They would smile, but the smiles never quite reached their eyes. Yet in the quiet of the night, as Arijit slept beside her, Kavya lay awake, feeling as though she had crossed a line within her heart. Arijit sensed the change too. It was subtle, the way Kavya's gaze would drift away from him at dinner, the slight distance when he reached for her hand. He had always known his job was challenging for their marriage, but now, a quiet fear began to stir within him. One evening, as Arijit sat on the sofa, flipping through an old photo album, Ananya climbed onto his lap, her tiny fingers tracing the pages. "Papa, why do you look sad?" she asked innocently, her eyes filled with concern. Arijit tried to smile, gently stroking her hair. "I'm not sad, my little bird," he said, though the words felt hollow even to him. Kavya watched from the doorway, a sting of guilt and confusion piercing her heart. She wanted to go to them, to mend the cracks that no one else could see, but something deep within held her in place. Days turned into weeks, and her conversations and meetings with Aditya grew even more secretive, charged with an intensity that had begun to consume them both. What had once been innocent now threatened to become a tempest, ready to break free. One evening, after an especially emotional conversation, Aditya leaned in close and whispered, "Kavya, let's stop pretending we don't know what this is." Kavya's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to deny it, to remind him that she was married, that she had a family. But the space between them was so charged, their faces mere inches apart. Her heart betrayed her as she closed the distance, and their first kiss bound them together in a way that had been building for so long. When they finally pulled apart, the weight of what they had done hung heavy in the air. Neither spoke, but in that silence, a decision had already been made. The line had been crossed, and there was no going back. Friends, if you like the story, please like, subscribe and hit the bell notification button.